Oh, there we go.
Okay, welcome coaches. It's great to be back online and bringing you some fantastic talks in the near future. It's been a long while since we've done everything, so it really is good to be back and good to see some new names which we haven't had online before with Swim Coach. So warm welcome to everybody. I hope 2022 has really started off with a bang for all of you, and wishing you a wonderful year. I do want to start on time as much as possible. A lot of coaches are coming in. I'm assuming everybody's audio is good. So if you want to just pop in the chat that you can hear us and see the three of us, just so we know you're all there. Okay, anybody? No, but I think we're good. All right. It is 7 o'clock South African time. I'm still sitting here in cold Belgium, so I'm an hour behind you. Hi, Liz. Thanks for letting me know you can hear us. I'm going to hand over to Tracy and Barry, and they're going to take it away. I'll be here in the back end, so if anybody needs, please, the chat is open. Raise your hand if you have questions, comments, and we have allocated sufficient time to have quite a in-depth Q&A at the end. So we'll chat again then. Right, Tracy, Barry, over to you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl.
Thanks, Cheryl. Hi, guys, and thanks for joining us tonight. I am absolutely thrilled to welcome Barry Bridges to present for us tonight. I've been following Barry for quite a while on various platforms that I've been watching. In fact, Barry and I connected sometime sort of beginning, middle of last year, and we started sort of engaging a little bit on the work that he's kind of doing. I've taken a particular interest in this type of science, specifically because when we went to the 2016 Olympics Coaches Conference, they had an entire morning dedicated to sleep science. And I had, in fact, never come across anybody that was practicing this in South Africa until I came across Barry. So this is a science that I think we have to sort of investigate and explore. I know that coaches in Africa have to wear a dozen hats and that our job is pretty loaded, but you know, best thing to do is to just get a little bit of education about things, and then, you know, if you come across people that really do need help, then you direct them to professionals like Barry, who can actually take care of this line of the element of performance for us. So thank you, Barry. Thank you for joining us. I'm very grateful that you gave us your time. And I am going to just give you my screen so you can head out and carry on. Take it away.
Cool. Thanks, Tracy, for having me on board the sleep performance talk. And I'm happy to share my knowledge around the sleep science side of things. And welcome to everybody online this evening. Where I think everyone's based locally this evening, if I'm correct. Yeah, so Tracy obviously has introduced myself, what I do. So basically, just to get into that more, I'm a founder of a company called Successful Sleeper. So if you guys ever want to have a look at what I do, it's www.successfulsleeper.com. And basically, it's a sleep coaching online platform. I work with normal elite athletes, skills coaches, DJs and music producers, and lawyers. So you can have a look at browse my website. You can have a look who I've worked with. And basically it tells you what I do within the coaching and what my programs that I offer and packages. So today's going to be quite an important talk. It's basically going to be talked around the sleep and recovery health. And we're going to cover a lot of subjects, criteria that you might have learned And there is going to be some questions, so I can have some engagement with you guys going forward that I'll ask per slide. And then we'll have Q&As after the talk as well. So if you guys can see that, we have learning objectives. So what we'll look at today is basically learning objectives. So this is what you're going to learn from the talk this evening. So this is all based around sleep science concepts. I'm going to try definitely keep it a little very simple so you guys can make use of it and understand it. So these are the topics we're going to be looking at. Is summary of understanding circadian rhythms. So we're going to look at circadian rhythms. We're going to identify your own chronotype. So ideally, if you guys can have a pen and paper, that'll be ideal as well if you would like to take some extra notes in, because that'll help as well. And sunlight and the importance of it, we'll be looking at. We'll be looking at technology breaks. We're going to be looking at how to build up optimal recovery flow. So that's with your athletes and coaches as well. We're going to look at recovery routines for sleep, and we're going to look at something that you guys would have heard of is sleep hygiene for optimal performance. Okay, so that is the learning objectives. And now we are going to look at something called circadian rhythms. Okay, and then Tracy will just come down with the information content. Okay, guys, so really something that's really important to understand is circadian rhythms. Now, you probably would have heard it before. Some of you might not have heard circadian rhythms. I think it's very important for you as coaches to understand what is circadian rhythms. So I think I'm going to define it, go into a little bit deeper to help you understand what circadian rhythms is, because this is very important. This is something that we all relate to on Earth. So circadian rhythms, just think of circadian rhythms as your 24-hour body clock process, which is linked to your brain and body. So when I say 24-hour body clock, I mean we release certain body functions within a 24-hour cycle. So before you look on the right-hand image, if you think 24-hour clock releases bodily functions, think of body functions, core temperature, hormone regulation, cognitive arousal, performance arousal, metabolic rate, digestive system as well. So those are your bodily functions. So these are things that are obviously occurring on a 24-hour basis. And this is important to know because now you'll know when your athletes peak at certain times of the day and they don't peak at certain times of the day. Because what we want to do is obviously build a better relationship with the circadian rhythm. Now, circadian rhythm is divided into 2 cycles. You have a day cycle, which is where we'll have more energy and performance because we're active, we're moving, and we're doing our things on a day-to-day basis. Whether we're working as an office employee or whether we're athlete, we're training and practicing. And then our evening cycle is where we'd look at more of the recovery side of things. We will have more focus on low energy needed, and then we're obviously looking at more recovery. Now, this is obviously going to depend on the athlete and the different sports. You might have in swimming that you do compete in late hours in the evening versus you might compete in mid-afternoon, or you might compete early morning with your swimming events. And that will differ from different sports as well. So the whole goal is with circadian rhythm is for your athletes and yourself as coaches is to build a relationship with the circadian rhythm. So when you don't build a relationship with the circadian rhythm, then it affects your recovery. So your mental and physical recovery gets impacted and will have a knock-on effect on your sleep at night. So when you do have a relationship with the day and evening cycle, or day and dark cycle, should I say, then you'll have a better response of performance, mentally and physically, and you'll have a better recovery process in the evening. Okay, so if we look at the right image, so I'm on my phone here, so I'm just gonna extend it here so I can see it clearly. So you have a little circle, you can see it goes in around the clock in a 24-hour process. And basically you'll see there's certain things you can see really happening, what we looked at bodily functions, which I mentioned early on. So you can see at 6 o'clock is when it starts. And then you'll see melatonin release stops. So melatonin Remember, melatonin is your sleep hormone that gets you to sleep at night. So there are two hormones that controls our sleep and recovery. The first one is serotonin, which we get from sunlight, and we get that from a high protein breakfast. And melatonin is the hormone that gets our brain switched off at night that will allow us to fall asleep quicker. So as you can see, as we go from 6 o'clock in the morning, melatonin release stops, and then you start your day by getting some sunlight. So now we're getting this activation into our brain, which links to our body. And then as we go around the clock, we have highest alertness at 11 o'clock. And by 12 o'clock, that's when we would normally be having our lunch between 12 and 1. And then as we go up this little clock, we have look at our best coordination times. It'll be at like 3 o'clock, fastest reaction times, and strength training. If you want to have your peak strength training and improve your strength training lifts, 5 o'clock would be your ideal time to see with that. And then as we go around the clock till 6 o'clock in the evening, we want to start limiting caffeine. And then as we move around, we will get into more of our recovery approach. Now, as I said before, this will depend on your sport, whether you are competing. You might be competing late tonight as well. And then you would need obviously an individual approach towards optimizing your circadian rhythm. But generally, if you're not competing and you're just practicing during the week, then you obviously want to build a relationship with the circadian rhythm. And then as you go around the clock, this is where they say take off technology, dim the lights, and then we can start entering the melatonin phase. So melatonin is when the brain starts getting tired and it's getting ready for bedtime. Now, as we go in, we'll go into our sleep phase, and then we'll go into midnight, and then we'll be bouncing around into light and deep sleep in the evening. So the most important thing with this is when it comes to getting better sleep at night is you need to build a good relationship with the circadian rhythm and have a good recovery flow, which is what we're going to talk about later. So everything that you do during the day, you need to control. Otherwise, if you don't control it, it's going to affect your sleep at night, where the brain will not be able to switch off. Remember, the brain controls our sleep, nothing else. So if you're highly aroused athlete, you can't switch off. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be able to switch off in the evening, which is going to affect your sleep. And then it obviously affects your performance the next day when you have to wake up and then start the whole process of the day. So this, you guys can do some research on your own if you want to. You can always just type in the word circadian rhythm on your browser, and it can go into really much more in depth than this. But for tonight, this evening, it's all just for you to understand circadian rhythm, what the function is, what it's supposed to do, and how do we relate to this on a 24-hour process. Okay, so there's a question I'd like to ask you guys to get some engagement. And do you guys have a good relationship with your own circadian rhythm? So I'll get Cheryl or someone or Tracy to give me some feedback. I'll let you guys answer through the chat group if you'd like. Otherwise, you can unmute yourself, and if you want to give your answer, or Cheryl will just give me some feedback on that.
So, yeah, so most of the some coaches just say no, recognizing that no, always seem so busy.
Okay.
I know with myself, I mean, I discovered the circadian rhythm story about 3 years ago, and it was only after that I managed to actually do anything for myself. Yeah, quite a lot of engagement from the coaches, and nobody really feeling like they have any kind of relationship with their circadian rhythm.
Okay, well, you had the perfect talk for tonight. So you're going to get some very good insights. So, I mean, there's already, and we're going to dive more into this. So as we go along in the chat with the other slides to come, guys, you're going to see how you can build a better relationship with the circadian rhythm. So just think of circadian rhythms now. What I would like you guys to do on your own personal time is to type in the word circadian rhythms. So you can just get a little bit of a further input with it. And this you can do on your spare time, allocate at least 5-10 minutes, type in circadian rhythms on your browser, and then you will be able to go in a little bit more in depth. But for today, it's just for you to understand. And now we've come to the conclusion that no one has the coaches. So this is what happens. If the coaches don't have a relationship with circadian rhythms, it has a knock-off effect with the athletes. and you're going to see this later on in the presentation, because all about building better circadian rhythm is you have to have a good recovery approach during the day. Your recovery does not start the hour wind down routine before bedtime. That's too late. So we're going to go into that later in the conversation, so definitely stay tuned. But yeah, thanks for the inputs, and that's on circadian rhythms. So we can move on to the next one. Okay, guys, so next one is something that we do have. And the chronotypes is basically, first of all, we need to understand what a chronotype is. So you would have heard a morning person, an evening person, a lark and an owl. I don't have the images there, but if you can picture a lark, like a bird when they're humming in the morning, then when you wake everyone up in the morning, and an owl is obviously someone, owl is in the dark. In the evening, they'll obviously be doing their thing in the evening. So just to give you a little bit of image on that. Okay. So basically chronotypes, we need to actually define what a chronotype is. So you need to know what it is. So chronotypes is your sleep characteristic, depending on which affects your sleep patterns. So chronotype is something that can be adaptable to any schedule. So you can adapt to any schedule. A chronotype will obviously vary depending on your age as well. It'll depend on your environment and your shift if you are working different schedules. So if you're an athlete, you're obviously working like a shift worker as well, because you're training during the day and then you compete in the evening, or vice versa. You might compete in the evening and then do some training recovery later in the day. So it's important to first of all understand the chronotypes. So we've already defined what it is. It's your sleep characteristic. So your chronotypes, when I say sleep characteristic, is basically will tell you your bedtimes and wake up times during the day. So we'll each have, most of us will either go to bed early in the morning or we'll go to bed late in the evening. And that's based on our chronotype. So remember, your chronotype, like I said, it is adaptable. It can change to a certain schedule, but then you'll have to make some changes in your routine, which is during the day, which I'm going to talk about later, which is more the recovery approach. So let's have a look at the characteristics, which I've highlighted here in the talk and the presentation. So characteristics, we're looking at morning person, which is a bird. So early morning, you rise up at 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. I presume this would be mostly your swimmers. Love breakfast in the morning, very focused in the mornings. So you'll find if you're a morning person, you can take on the whole world. Analytical, cognitive, and physical arousal. You love to exercise early in the morning. You normally have a dip in the energy after lunchtime. So if we can remember that circadian rhythm, after 12 o'clock is when you start feeling fatigued and tired. So you're not at your 100% best compared to the early morning slots, and struggle with jet lag and shift work. So a lot of the time, the athletes I work with, especially the morning chronotypes, they would struggle with jet lag and shift work. So these are just characteristics for you guys to relate to. And you might have seen this in your athletes when you're training them on the skills training or on the strength conditioning. Evening person would be an owl. So I think morning person, bird, evening person, owl. Late morning riser, you like to hit the snooze button, don't like to wake up. So 9 o'clock is normally a good time for you to start. Normally hit the snooze button, like I mentioned before. Normally skip breakfast in the morning. So this is a habit I normally see with an evening person chronotype, is they'll normally have a cup of coffee, strong coffee in the morning, no breakfast. They normally skip breakfast in the morning. And then what happens is this affects their eating later, because what happens with the evening chronotype is they will skip breakfast, they'll have a big lunch, and then they'll have even a bigger dinner meal. And that's not obviously ideal for recovery, because we don't want to be going into our recovery late at night with a big meal in our stomach. So normally have a high amount of caffeine in the morning, very focused midday. So you'll find evening chronotypes, they struggle in the morning slots. You might have seen this in your athletes when you're teaching them a new skill set, or they're doing some strength conditioning in the morning, depending on their schedule. And then you'll see evening chronotype athletes, like your athletes as swimmers, they'll very focused midday. So from 1 o'clock, they compete all the way till 2 o'clock in the morning. And then they cope well, jet lag and shift lag. The problem with this is most of our athletes need to be able to adapt to a morning shift. So you'll find about at least 70% of the population, the world population, is an evening person chronotype. But unfortunately, the world doesn't work around their schedule. It works around more of a morning early schedule between 6 and 5 o'clock. So what we need to do is to make sure that we change the routine a bit and we provide the solutions for them going forward. Okay, so that is chronotypes. So I would like to ask you guys in the panel, in the chat group. So based on these characteristics, which chronotype would you think you are? And I'll give you some time to think about that. Okay, so we got an owl coming through, Cheryl. Miles says morning. Sue's definitely a bird. Kind of feel like I'm both now. Cool, I'm gonna go into that. Morning. Bird. Cool, we got a lot of morning guys. A lot of morning. Bird, morning, cool. Another morning, lots of morning chronotypes.
Barry,
Yes,
what are some of the consequences that you will struggle with if you are operating in your wrong chronotype?
Yeah, so operating, if you can just elaborate with that, Tracy, sorry.
So for example, a school teacher who is an evening owl person,
yes.
But obviously forced to be highly functioning in the morning because that's when school starts. It starts at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning and you have to hit the ground running. So what are some of the common sort of struggles or habits or setbacks that they will have if they don't sort out this chronotype problem? So, because I think what inevitably what happens is that they operate suboptimally Monday to Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday just reinforce the evening chronotype.
Yeah, so obviously their mental and physical recovery will be impacted. They're going to have to, their focus and concentration will be very difficult in the morning. So they'll have to redefine their approach. They'll have to start changing their habits rather in the evening. They'll have to look at earlier bedtimes. But there are certain criteria they'll have to look at is the first thing when they wake up in the morning is they need to do a few things like sunlight, exercise, and high protein breakfast, which will allow them to wake up quicker. The problem is with an evening person is they're still carrying that melatonin, which I spoke to you guys about, that sleep hormone, and they carry it late into the morning as well. So that's why they need direct sunlight as soon as possible. So it's basically going to affect their whole day until they change certain habits within their morning structure. Then they'll be able to catch up with the morning person chronotype. Because you'll find a lot of the evening chronotypes, like the old teacher, she's going to be playing a lot of catch up, or trying to catch up with the other morning colleagues until she makes those changes in the morning routine. So the morning routine is very important for all of us, whether you're a morning person or evening person. You'll find morning people would have a very good routine and structure compared to an evening person, where evening person is all over the show. They take on a lot of things, they're highly stressed, they're very irritable in the morning, etc. So there's a question, how long does it, from Julia, how long does it take to, sorry, Tracy, did that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Cool. So Julia asked the question there. I think she says, how long does it take to change an owl to a bird, if I'm correct?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yes, that's a question.
Okay, so that is going to depend on a lot of factors, Julia. That's going to depend on the environment of the chronotype, the person. It's going to depend on their schedule. I would think it would take at least about a month, maybe sooner, for them to change. And the reason is evening chronotypes, like I mentioned before, don't like change. So it's the small things like the sunlight and the breakfast and the exercise moving in the morning, which they're going to have to integrate into their routine when they wake up. So that's going to be the starting block. So it's going to very differ. It's also going to be differ with the meal timing when they eat meals. Because if you continue skipping breakfast and eating bigger meals for lunch and dinner and going bed late at night, it's definitely going to affect you waking up in the morning. But we're going to touch on later on in the conversation. So Julia, if you can just stay tuned for that, and then we're going to show you how to build a better optimal recovery flow for that. Cool, thank you for that. Any other questions coming through?
No, I don't have anything. Can we move on?
Yeah, we can move on to the next one. Okay, thanks guys for your input there. Okay, so something that I think most of the population is not getting enough of now, seeing that we are in this COVID pandemic and we are remotely based from home, is sunlight and sleep. And this is really important because they do have a relationship, and sunlight and sleep has a relationship with your chronotype, and it has a relationship with your circadian rhythm. So this is very important to understand the importance of it. And I'm going to give you some tools now, if you have a pen, just to write down as well, for some things you can use in order to know how much sunlight you need and what is the intensity of you need in the day. So sunlight is very important because, as I mentioned before, sunlight gives us energy, mood, and performance. And what it does is releases serotonin. So when you get direct sunlight, if you can just imagine this, myself stepping outside on the balcony, having my coffee or breakfast. Once I step outside, what happens is sunlight basically travels through to your eye pupils, and then it goes from the eye pupils into the pineal gland. Now, the pineal gland is a gland located by the brain. And basically what it does is it tells me, Barry, it is time to start your day. Now, what's unique about this is when you get that direct sunlight in the morning, especially in the morning sunlight, is it will send signals to your bodily functions and your body. So sunlight will send direct signals to your internal organs, and those internal organs will get a light switched on saying, it's time to start my digestive system, my metabolic system, my cognitive system, my brain, and my physical arousal. So when you don't have the direct sunlight, your brain will have to work 5 times much harder in the morning. Whatever you're doing, if you're at work, if you have to start early morning, if you're a teacher, or if you're an athlete that's doing strength conditioning, or maybe you have a swimming lesson in the morning and your evening chronotype, you need to get your morning sunlight in, because this is going to help you release serotonin. And it's very important because now I've explained to you what it does. So not only is the sunlight important, but it also connects your body, your internal organs to switch on in the morning. So you've got to understand that your internal organs in your body all have circadian body clocks. They all have different timings. The only way to get them synchronized is you've got to get them morning sunlight during the day. So question is, how much sunlight do I need? When do I need it? So there are 2 dosages that you need. You need a morning exposure for 15 to 30 minutes, and you need a midday exposure of 15 to 30 minutes. So we don't need to spend a lot of time in the sun, but we do need a dosage first thing in the morning, and we need a dosage in midday. So if you have your swimmers in the pool, obviously it's outdoor pool. That's going to be beneficial. If it's an indoor facility, then you're going to have to test it out using, which I'm going to talk about now, is a lux light meter. So what I want you guys to do is write down something called a lux light meter. So it's LUX light meter. And basically what the lux light meter is, it's an app to test the amount of lux intensity. Okay, so what happens is you'll download the app on your cell phone. And when you go outside, or when you're indoor or outside, or test the amount of lux that you need. Now, in the morning, you need 1,000 lux in the morning for serotonin to be released. So I'll just repeat that again. You need 1,000 lux in the morning for serotonin, the happy hormone, to be released. Then midday, you need your second exposure for 15, 30 minutes, and it needs to be 10,000 lux. Now, depending where you are on Earth, is Europe, you're going to struggle to get this amount of lux in, especially when it's winter. So when we're in South Africa, it's going to be quite easy. So basically, this measurement, you can play around with it in your indoor facility. So if you've got athletes coming into your swimming pool, use an indoor facility, you'll need to test out what the lux is. So I don't think you're going to get 10,000 lux in an indoor facility. It's going to depend on the lighting. But if you're training outside in the afternoon pool, in the morning, you're definitely going to get 10,000 lux, especially on a sunny day. So the lux is just basically a measurement, and lux stands for the light intensity. So that's why it's super important to understand the measurements. So morning, you need 1,000, midday, you need to get 10,000 lux. And in such situations where you can't get sunlight, there is an option where we look at a light therapy device box. It's almost like a screen tablet, and that will provide you the lux that you need in order to function during the day. The problem is 90% of the population is not getting enough outdoor light. Therefore, it's putting an impact on their circadian rhythm. So understand with you guys got coaching throughout the day. So it might be difficult for you to step outside if you're in an indoor environment. But I do recommend that you do need to make time for this, and you need to schedule this. And we'll chat about that later in the conversation. And yeah, so basically I like to explain what sunlight does. It basically helps your brain also produce melatonin, especially when you get the midday sunlight. So the morning sunlight exposure, when you get that 1,000 lux, is going to give you that serotonin, the happy hormone release, and you feel happy, you can start your day. And then your midday exposure will help you produce melatonin late at night in order for your brain to sleep. Remember when we looked at the rhythm, the melatonin is that switch off hormone that allows you to obviously fall asleep. And sunlight can obviously have impacts if you get, so what they've done is they looked at research. So people that do get sufficient amount of outdoor sunlight have improved their sleep hours by like an hour or two. So the quality of sleep definitely improves, and they have better cognitive functioning. Okay, so there's a question I would like to ask you guys is, how often do you spend your time outdoors in the morning and midday? Just so I can see if it's 30 minutes. Yeah, so please feel free to put in something in the chat. Okay, most of the day, Tracy, 2 to 3 hours. Simone said most of the day.
Yeah, I think, I mean, so many of the coaches are coaching indoors. And this, I think, yeah, I think this explains why so many coaches are feeling like they're not really,
Wow.
like they're not really functioning super well.
Yeah, so you got to get out, you have to make a plan for it. And then you'll see in the later in the presentation where I teach you how to build this recovery flow is going to be involved. So Julia said morning 1 hour, midday 2 hours. Okay, so now that you guys are spending some time morning, midday, we need to make sure you get that measurement of the lux. So you have to download that app on your phone. It's called an LUX light meter. So when you download the app, it will have like a light bulb, depending on if you're Android or iPhone. You can always just send me an email. I'm going to share my contact details afterwards, and I can always just give it to you, the link or something. But you have to get that certain amount, because especially in winter becomes tricky, especially in Cape Town. I'm based in Cape Town, so winters are very dark. I think Joburg and the rest part of the country kind of differs. There's more sunlight, but it's still cold. Yeah, so Tracy, it's going to differ. You're going to have to know what the measurement is you're getting in, if that makes sense.
So the whole like joke about the UK being a miserable place because there's no sunlight is actually a reality. It's not just it's not just a thing that people say.
Yeah, so there
is some truth behind it.
Yeah, definitely, especially in Europe. That's why they're not the most, well, I wouldn't say they're the most, you'll find quite a lot of people that's suicidal, miserable, and because of sunlight, they don't get that serotonin. So they hardly don't see in the sun in the UK because they go to work in the dark. they start work in the dark and they leave home to go to the dark. So there's no active sun. So sleep is a major problem there. I mean, they lose about like 100 billion of pounds just on sleep deprivation alone. So obviously your outdoor athletes will have a benefit for when they get sunlight, but if you have athletes that are training indoors, it's a big problem. So if you have fighters, MMA fighters, boxers like I work with, it's a big problem because they hardly don't go outside. They're always in the dodgy, dark gyms. There's hardly any light coming in. So remember, when your athletes and yourself don't get enough sunlight, you are putting your athletes at risk. And why I'm saying that is because if you training your athletes for a certain skill and they are half asleep, you're actually putting them at risk for injury. And a pure example for this, and I'm going off the topic here, but you'll notice a lot of fighters, when they're going to pre-camp, they get injured or fatigue or hurt. Now, the problem is, you'll probably find that most of them are evening chronotypes, but their coach that they train with, he's a morning guy, and he wants them all come in the morning. Now they train a new skill, and now they hit the bag wrong, or they try a new skill and they get hurt. And then obviously that's where you'll see a lot of fighters pick up injuries in their pre-camp leading up to the main fights, if that makes sense. But have you ever heard of that, Tracy, before? Have you guys ever heard of that?
Yeah. Okay, so now where this is particularly relevant to us as swimming coaches is that we take our swimmers to these meets, particularly high-end national meets like Olympic trials and world-class trials competitions are held at an indoor pool here in Durban. And everybody is delighted because obviously the elements are controlled and all that sort of stuff. But now this begs to question whether or not the kids should actually be sitting inside and if they should not be stepping outside a little bit more if they're expected to perform in this sort of setting.
Yeah, because you won't know which athletes are which chronotype. You see, that's the problem. So to be safer, if you want to cater for both chronotypes, is make sure both they have a morning dosage and they have a midday dosage. So then you're covering the full spectrum of the chronotypes. If that makes sense.
So I expect I'll see all the Durban coaches having their athletes outside this weekend.
Yeah. So make sure they set morning. If you don't see them morning, make sure they set midday. And just to go back, I know someone in the chat group asked they were a midway chronotype. So you do get two chronotypes that have a bit of a morning and a bit of an evening person. But normally, if I do get that, because they'll do a chronotype test with me, basically I'll ask them two questions. The first question is, can you function early in the morning, take on the whole world? If they answer yes to that, they are definitely more of a morning person. But if I ask them if you can take on the whole world later on at 11 o'clock in the morning, like analytical and physical performance stuff, if they answer yes to that, then you're definitely an evening chronotype. If that makes sense. So I know I had one person that asked in the chat group. Okay, so this is basically sunlight sleep. Very important. Use your lux meter, number one. Number two is make sure you get the morning and midday exposure, but we're going to cover that. What can happen if you have too much sunlight? Okay, so I don't think nothing really happen, Junita, on that side of things. Obviously, too much sunlight is bad for your skin. So now you'll see on a hot summer's day that the lux can go up to 100,000 plus. Now imagine if you suntanning during the day especially Australia and South Africa, which got high rates of skin cancer, you're putting 100,000 lux exposure on your skin. That's the amount of intensity you put on your skin. So you got to be careful, obviously, where your skin lotion, your screen lotion and stuff like that, because now you'll know that how much the intensity of lux you're actually putting on. So not only is it good to know how much lux you get in, but you can see how much pressure you put on your skin. So that's why they say don't go out midday, because that's when the lux is the strongest. So remember, as you wake up in the morning, in summer, the lux intensity of the sunlight is actually rising, and it'll drop after about 6, 7 o'clock, the lux gets lower. In winter, the lux is very low in the morning because there's no sunlight coming up. 9 o'clock, the lux rise. And about 3, 4 o'clock, the lux gets less in winter. So please play around with the lux app. It's very useful to know because you need to know what are the measurements, what the lux you're getting in. Okay, Tracy, so that's that. Okay, so hopefully so far no one's falling asleep to this talk, even though it's a sleep talk.
No, we're not sleeping.
Okay, cool. We're all wide awake. Okay, something that we are all exposed to is this use of technology. And when we talk about technology breaks, is how do we find this approach to take technology breaks in order to improve our mental recovery? Because if we're looking at cell phone devices and our laptops, which we're all exposed to during the day, depending if we have an office job, because as swim coaches, if it's a part-time or full-time job, you'll have to do some admin during the day, morning or late at night. So you're definitely going to have some exposure to technology. Now, the main thing is we need to make sure that we have breaks when we use technology, when we're on our cell phone devices, and our PCs and our laptops. So why we need to know why it's important? Well, our brain can only focus every 90 minutes of the day. So it needs a quick recovery period. Now, why that's important? Because basically what happens is, what we've been taught is we wake up in the morning, work, no breaks, go to sleep. But what actually happens is we'll go through a peak for 90 minutes, and then we go through a dip after 90 minutes. And then that's when you need recovery. So you'll see like sports that are 90 minutes duration, you always see the best peak, best performance with the soccer players, rugby players, other sports that are in duration of 90 minutes. You'll see the best performance. But as soon as they go over the 90 minutes, you're going to see a drop in recovery. Because physiologically and psychologically, your body will work according to what we call ultradian rhythms. So what you guys can also look at is ultradian rhythms. And this is how our brain uses energy production during the day. So whatever we do during the day, we are using energy. Whether we're talking to someone, like I'm presenting now to you guys, I'm using a lot of mental and a lot of energy production because I have to explain topics, I'm explaining everything. So that's why it's so important the brain takes breaks every 90 minutes, because based on our DNA biological clock, we need to have breaks within every 90-minute period. We cannot work, and then take breaks after 5 hours. Now, what happens when we do that is we put in a mental strain on our mental recovery. So we have to build up this recovery process during the day, which is very important. And if we go into it, what are tech breaks? Well, aim to take breaks during the day with no mobile device or PC usage. Tech breaks, as I explained now, will help with mental recovery. And what can a tech break be? So it can be making coffee. It can be tying a shoelace. It can be staring at the wall. It can be making a salad. It can be making a cup of coffee. It could be speaking to a friend, phoning a friend, how you doing? It could be listening to music, meditating, because this is how we build up better mental recovery. But if we're on our cell phone devices and laptops for 8 hours in the day, we are building extra stimulation to the brain. The brain doesn't want this because we can only focus at every 90 minutes. So how do we actually take these technology breaks? There are two options. Either 5 by 5 minute breaks every 90 minutes, which will actually be better, or 25-minute block period with no technology. So guys, just a question with the group. I would like to ask you guys, how often do you take technology breaks in the day at every 90 minutes? And this is going to kind of put you on the spot a bit. Tracy, does that make sense to you? Did you?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense to me. And you know what, Barry, everything that you're saying, you know, in my line of study and my interest in flow psychology and flow state, this fits in perfectly to all of the neuropsychology that we've been taught. So this, for me, just puts a big fancy ribbon around the performance package.
Yeah, you'll find most people just they take breaks, but they'll take breaks when they're tired, when they've peaked, and they'll take breaks after 4 hours. None unless I have to coach, and I don't take enough breaks. Okay. I was in when I'm in the pool. Okay, so now we can see how important this is, because we want to improve our mental recovery. So,
and actually, I think what I'm seeing is that coaches spend a lot of time focusing on their athletes, and they're not spending a lot of time looking after themselves.
Yeah, which impacts the athlete, because if the coach is not looking after themselves, the energy you display or produce to the student athlete is going to have a knock-on effect of them. Because if you're half-tired, fatigued, your communication is going to lack, your messaging is going to lack, and then the athlete's not going to understand what you're trying to say, if I can make an example out of it. So you need to make sure that you have some time that you build up mental recovery during the day, and that's by taking technology breaks. Okay. So, okay, now we're going to move on to the exciting stuff. Yeah, ready to move on? Okay, so now we've talked about circadian rhythms. We've mentioned chronotypes. How do you identify what your chronotype is? We've looked at sunlight, how the importance of sunlight and sleep is in relation to that. We've looked at, now the last slide was technology breaks. Now we've had a lot of technical words I've used, and now we actually going to put all this stuff into a practical space where we can actually start using all that concepts now into what we call recovery flow. So what is optimal recovery flow? Well, basically is how do we start a recovery flow? What are routines that we do in the morning that's going to depend our later outcome, how we sleep at night. So I think if you have a better recovery flow from start in the morning to when we switch off at night, for an athlete or coach or person that works in the office or anybody, then you'll be able to have a better circadian rhythm relationship. So like you guys mentioned, you didn't have, some of you guys, your coaches, you guys mentioned in the chat that you don't have a good circadian rhythm relationship. Now, this is how you're going to get a good circadian rhythm relationship, by doing exactly everything on this and how I build in optimal recovery flow. So now think of what all we chatted about in the previous slides. Now, this is how you put it into a practical application that will work for everybody. Okay, so we have 10 steps we need to do, which starts early in the morning and it goes till late at night or when nighttime. So the first step we need to do is we need to get morning sunlight, 15 to 30 minutes. Why? We get our serotonin release dosage. Second, we need to look at a high protein breakfast within 60 to 90 minutes upon waking up. Okay. The third thing is we need to have movement activation or brain dump 5 minutes. Now, movement activation can be anything like push-up, stretching. Your body needs circulation because remember, you have been doing nothing for 10 hours the previous night, so we need some movement. Now, I would say step 1, 2, and 3 need to be done within 60 to 90 minutes. Why is a high protein breakfast important? It's because a high protein breakfast releases also serotonin from the gut. Remember, your gut and your brain are all linked together. Your brain will send messages to the gut, same with what the gut would do when it works, when the circadian rhythm starts to work. A brain dump is basically something that, a brain dump is basically and you guys can write this down, brain dump, pen and paper, because you can actually Google this on a browser. Brain dump is basically a way to declutter the brain. So if you find that your athletes are very stressed out or you stress out as a coach, you have some stresses, I always recommend that you brain dump your stresses during the morning, and the brain dump, you can rather do that in the evening for your gratitude and etc. So before I go on, Stefan had a question. does intermittent fasting count? So you got to understand when you're going to bed at a certain time, let's say 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, depending on your chronotype, you are already doing some form of intermittent fasting where you're going to be from 7, if you look at 7 o'clock so say you're going to bed 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and you wake up 5, 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning. There is already a channel of intermittent fasting happening. So I'm not an expert in the intermittent fasting, but you are just understanding you're already fasting. So your body is already craving energy for the morning to start. So that's why if you have something like swimming lesson, or you have a strength conditioning or training, your body would crave energy. So it's going to need some energy to fuel the body for the brain and the gut. So yeah, it's a very 50-50 subject, but just understand you are already fasting already when you switch off at night in the evening. I know that answers your question, Stefan. Okay, so good. Okay, thanks, Stefan. Brain dump, so you guys learned something. And 4th step, technology breaks, shift, evening chronotype. So evening chronotype guys must take technology breaks in the morning. So if you have any evening chronotype athletes, they must take technology breaks in the morning, like we explained, 5 by 5, 5-minute breaks every 90 minutes, 5 of those. Number 5, you need to eat lunch meal, same time every day. Now, the reason for this is your brain and body and your guts, remember, is linked to the circadian rhythm. And when you give it a consistent rhythm, the timing of the meals will impact your performance as well. So if you eat meals at a certain time of the day, digestive system will come used to that, and then obviously take in all the nutrients that you need. But when you have inconsistent lunch meal times during the day, like you have lunch at 12, and then Tuesday you have at 2, and then Wednesday 3 o'clock, you don't build up that circadian rhythm relationship. So that's very important to make sure that you guys have lunch meals at the same time every day. So we've covered 5 tips, guys. 6th tip, step 6 is midday sunlight, 15 to 30 minutes, you need to step outside. So midday, make sure, based on your chronotype, whether you're a morning, evening person, step outside 15 to 30 minutes after your midday exposure. Step 7, midday naps, optional. Between 1 and 3, 20 minutes to 90 minutes. So there's actually 2 options. You can have 1 to 3 or 5 to 7. Those are your windows for if you want to take a nap. And the nap can be anything between 20 minutes, 90 minutes. Why 90 minutes? Because 90 minutes is equivalent to a sleep cycle. So if you think of the image that we went back and we spoke about circadian rhythms and we went through the clock about all these different times, light sleep, deep sleep, your brain sleeps in 90-minute cycles, not hours of sleep. So when you go to a sleep lab, they will test your brain activity in 90-minute cycles. So when I work with clients and athletes, I teach them how to sleep in sleep cycles, because if they don't get a certain amount of sleep cycles in the evening, they can make it up during the day by getting naps, if that makes sense. Okay, step 8, technology breaks for afternoon shift. So now your morning chronotype athletes, they need to start taking breaks in the afternoon with technology. Then step 9, dinner meal, same time every day, and avoid late dinner meals. Latest is 7:30 in the evening that you need to be having. And it needs to be a small dinner meal, not a big dinner meal. And step 10 is recovery routine before bedtime, which we are going to chat about later in the conversation. So just keep those thoughts with the step 10, because I'm going to dive more in that in the presentation coming up. Okay, so a good question to ask is, what is your optimal recovery flow like in the morning? Oh, so Tracy, before you bounce on that one, let's go back to that previous slide, if you can. Thanks. Okay, guys, so in the chat, I would like to ask you, what is your morning recovery flow like in the morning? What do you guys get up to? What do you do? Do you have breakfast? Do you get sunlight? Do you get those 3 steps in? You can say yes or no, or you can just explain what's okay. Stefan asks, is it
So
one
something
takes-
I started doing like a year ago.
Yes.
Yeah. So something I started doing a year ago is that I get up and I do my to-do list for the day. So that would be my brain dump, right?
That's your brain dump. That's your brain dump.
Okay.
So, but there's two ways to do a brain dump. There's one for your positive gratitude that you rather do before bedtime. And the negative stuff that concerns you and stress, I'll get that first thing done in the morning. There's two ways to do it. Because you don't want that stress that you're carrying to carry into your bedtime space. Tracy, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's one way to
Yeah.
just give it a little bit of variation. Stefan asked, do you have to have 90 minutes for sleep? No, you can rest. You can have a nap between 20 and 30 minutes. The naps are going to depend on each individual. Some will want to have sleep longer. You'll find evening chronotype will like to take longer naps versus a morning chronotype person will like to take shorter naps. So 90 minutes is a full sleep cycle, and that's what your brain will go through when you sleep at night. Okay, so anyone else want to put in input for what the optimal recovery flow? Cheryl, what about yourself? I'm actually have Sakina.
I'm here. I fit into nothing of all of this. Here in Belgium, I actually work different shifts. So like this week, I'm up 4:30 and then back home at 3. And then the week after, it's a change. So I don't know, how does the person deal with that in your sleep when every week it's different? And you have to function differently week in every second week.
Yeah, I think most importantly, you need to get step 1 and step 2 and step 3. Whether you're going to work morning or late shifts, you need to keep that consistent rhythm. Because if you change, obviously you need, so with you being, I think you said you're an owl chronotype, if I'm not mistaken, Cheryl.
Yes.
Yeah, so owl, you just need to make sure that your morning approach is a little bit better, because the evening approach you can adapt quite well to. But it's normally the morning that's the adjustment you need. So step 1, 2, and 3 is going to be vitally important for you. I would say all steps between 1 and 5 for you to adapt to a morning schedule when you start in the morning. Because there's not the problem is your evening schedule. The problem with your chronotype and most people that are evening chronotypes is they can't really adjust properly to a morning schedule, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, okay. And you're spot on in terms of how it affects me and how I am. Yep.
Yeah, so if you can get 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in, guaranteed your recovery flow is going to be much better. Your cognitive and physical arousal is going to be much better. It's going to have a better flow state. Yeah. Okay.
Definitely going to be putting it into practice. Yep.
Definitely give me feedback on that. Okay, so we can move on to the next one, Tracy. So I hope everyone. I think I skipped a question with someone in the chat, Tracy.
And it was Mel just sharing that he's actually just realizing that he's actually got quite a nice circadian rhythm without even realizing it.
Oh, cool. Super. So you can teach us a few things or two. Okay, so guys, we are going to look at now the recovery routines for sleep. So like step 10, which I mentioned. And Tracy, you can just bring all the images up if you can. Okay, guys, so you might have heard recovery routines for sleep. Another word that they use is sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene is obviously defined as having better sleep habits. So I'd rather look at this as more of recovery routines for sleep. So this is what you need to do before bedtime. Now, obviously, it'll differ from in each individual because each individual has a different chronotype and different work schedule. But I find these are very useful to do. Some of you guys might be doing it, but let's have a look through them to see what we are doing. So one I already mentioned is brain dump, positive writing on thoughts using a pen and paper. So brain dump, grab a pen and paper, write down gratitude like Tracy does early in the morning. but rather put that in the evening before bedtime, write down some stuff, goals that you need to set out. That's what a brain dump does, because it basically what it does is declutters the brain and allows us to be more clear, etc. The nice thing with a brain dump is it gives us reference to the previous day. So if you have a bad night's sleep and you brain dump on a piece of paper for the next to-do list for the next day, when you wake up in the morning, you'll still have some reference to it on a piece of paper. So it's very important. Also helps for mental recovery as well during the day, etc. Because you'll find with all the technology we're taking in during the day, all the information overloading, it obviously impacts our brain. And like I mentioned before, sleep, the brain controls sleep. So if the brain is impacted in stress, it's going to impact our sleep. Another one is warm shower bath before bedtime. So what happens is when we have a warm shower bath, it elevates our body temperature, and then it drops up body temperature into a cool temperature. So you never want to be going into your bedroom space, into your bedroom with having a hot temperature. It needs to be a cool, they say between 18 degrees body temperature you want to be entering. Okay, a really good thing as well, if you guys have partners or friends, is to chat to your partner, building positive connections. So most time we might find that we're so busy with other things, we don't spend time with our partners in the evening. And sometimes this could lead to a conflict situation where you start arguing. So to avoid that is start building up a better positive connection with your partner, speaking to them, how the day has been, catching up with them. This will obviously increase better, less stress on the brain, and this will help, again, build up better mental recovery. Now, something that we all love to do is we like to watch Netflix series, TV late at night. Nothing wrong with that. But when you do that, they need to be in a certain environment. So it needs to be watching TV on a low volume. Okay, Mal. Okay, I'll get back. Mal, I will get back to you now. So watching TV on a low volume, relaxing setting. So you must be on a couch or bed, preferably if your room's in your TV's in your bed, and in a dim light. So this is what we also, this is also like a way to relax the body and mind. So TV's fine watching before bed, but you need to make sure it's on a low volume, not on a high volume. So these are important things to do. So if you are doing it, great. That's you'll probably find 90% people will fall asleep on TV, watching TV. That's fine. Just make sure it's in a comfortable setting. You might be like, well, is the blue light going to disrupt melatonin? That is a whole conversation to have next time, because there's a lot of research that doesn't really get impacted. And last thing, self-massage tissue, work using a foam roller. So guys will probably know a foam roller. Use that for up and low body dynamic stretches and meditation. So these are some examples. You can use a foam roller to obviously loosen and tighten, or loosen the muscles that you've used on the previous session. If you guys haven't been exposed to a foam roller, up and low body dynamic stretches and meditation. So meditation, you can use apps such as Calm or Headspace. Those are the popular ones I prescribe to my athletes. But then again, guys, it will differ from person to person. So what I want to ask is a question through the group, and Mal, just to get back to you, brain dump autobiographies with accounts. It'll depend on the type of cognitive arousal they are giving you, the simulation. So just be careful of that, because if you are cognitive aroused and you're excited about something when you watch something, I wouldn't say watch something, but it might just overload the brain. So I would rather say a pen and paper would be better, because it'll get you to brainstorm more ideas. And basically what helps pen and paper is to declutter the brain. So the idea with the brain dump is to get away from technology, away from devices before bedtime. So we can get away from that arousal. Okay, cool. Thanks for that. Okay, so question to the guys is, how long does it take you to fall asleep at night? And this might be a personal one. You don't have to answer it, but if I can get some answers, that'd be great.
Yeah.
30 minutes, that's good. Too long, Cheryl, evening chronotype. 20 minutes, it's good. Amounts an hour with TV on. Okay. Stefan, 5 minutes. Stefan works very hard, coaching all day. I'm dead tired. It's good. Okay, so basically a window frame to look at is between 15 and 30 minutes. Okay. So what if you have an instance where you go to bed and you're lying there and you guys are like thinking, you're like, okay, I need to sleep, sleep, sleep. You're looking at wearable devices. When that happens, what I want you to do is you need to remove yourself from the bedroom space, go to a quiet area, do something relaxing, meditate, do a brain dump, read a book, and you'll probably find within 15, 20 minutes, your body will be ready to come to sleep. So what happens is when we lie down on bed, our brain creates this negative behavior that's connected to the bed and the brain, and therefore the brain will take very long to switch off. So in this instance, remove yourself from the bedroom, go to a quiet area in the lounge or somewhere else in the room, do some relaxation stuff, meditate, and that keeps you relaxed. And you'll probably find within 15, 20 minutes, you'll go into the bedroom space and be ready for bed. So that's quite important. Okay, so I think we have a next slide up. Tracy, is there one? Okay, guys, so this is sleep hygiene, which I mentioned before, and this is sleep hygiene. These are habits you can start doing immediately that will obviously have impact on your optimal performance, as well as all the other stuff we've mentioned before, the recovery flow and basic recovery routines before bedtime. So if you're not doing any of these things, you can try these out. They're definitely guaranteed to work, and I'm going to explain why. Okay, number one, consistent wake-up times in the morning. Why do I need consistent wake-up times in the morning? When you wake up at a certain time in the morning, your brain is building up sleep pressure. When your brain builds up sleep pressure, it's preparing the body and brain to switch off at a certain time at night. So you'll find if you wake up at 6 o'clock every day, including the weekends, you'll fall asleep at your guaranteed time of say 9 or 10 o'clock. When you have these different times of wake up times in the morning, you'll find it very difficult for your brain to switch off at night. So that's the reason why we need to wake up consistent times, and that's why it's important. Sleeping on the left side position, why is important? Because we put less pressure on our internal organs. So, and when you sleep on the left side position, increase pressure on heart and blood flow. Okay, Angela, yeah. So, okay, so that's what I was taught, that the left side puts less pressure on the internal organs because it's basically the most relaxed state. You'll see when you get into first aid position, when they teach you first aid, they normally put you on the left side position for recovery. So when you sleep on the left side, what you can do is rest on the left side, hands like this. And what you can do is put a pillow in between the two knees. So when you have left side, you actually have better recovery, optimal blood flow from the feet to the head in the left side position. Third one, avoid red meats and spicy foods for dinner meals. The reason is red meat, very difficult for the body, your gut to digest red meat. And it releases cortisol, which is a stress hormone. Stress hormones you only want to be released in the morning when you exercise. And spicy foods causes increase in body temperature. Caffeine, have early in the morning, 300 milligrams would be 2 cups. Anything after 1 o'clock, basically what happens is caffeine goes into your bloodstream and it sits there for 12 hours. So that's why caffeine will affect definitely your deep sleep quality at night. So guys, make sure that you rather have caffeine early in the morning, and that can be a whole subject on its own as well. Very important as well, switch off all EMF. EMF stands for electrical magnetic fields before bedtime. Now, there's been research that shows that EMF has some connection with the brain and allowing the brain to switch off. So what I would say is when you go in the evening, switch off all your Wi-Fi, especially if your router or any of your Wi-Fi stuff is close to your bed, or it may be in your bedroom space. Switch off your Wi-Fi. Just switch off all off and then put it on obviously in the morning. Put mobile phone on flight mode and put your phone far away from the bed. So guys, do not sleep with your phone underneath the pillow or next to your bed. Take your phone, put it on flight mode, put it into your cupboard, put it away, or put it outside the room, because your brain, if it's not, your brain's going to obviously want to play with the phone late at night. And most important thing, probably the most important thing, is don't stress about sleep at night. And the reason for this is stress is the main disruptor for sleep. If the brain is stressed, you are not going to be able to switch off in order to get sleep. Let sleep become a natural process, and it can only become a natural process once you start building a better optimal recovery flow. Okay, so before we move on, I would like to ask you guys, how often do you use technology before bedtime and for how long?
And now, obviously, like with relation to kids, Barry, to athletes.
Yeah.
Say, for example, traveling teams or anything like that. I mean, this is so it's in their best interest for you to collect phones at dinner and take them with you. So, speak to the folks before you go to dinner, and then collect the phones. Yeah,
that would be a good way to tackle it. Yeah, because another way to tackle is when you guys travel is to make sure you have morning chronotypes, if you can, in the one room, and you have your evening chronotypes in one room. Try not to mix them up, because what's going to happen is morning chronotype, once you go to bed before at a certain time, now evening chronotype friend next door to him, he's playing on his cell phone, then he's going to create a disruption in the morning chronotype, and this is going to affect the whole dynamic of the team and the performance next day. So if you know what your chronotypes are, put them all in the one room and put the evening chronotypes all in the one room, just to be safe. Does that make sense, basically?
Yeah. Okay.
Because the last thing is, you want your Olympic gold medal athletes, he might be swimming in the morning. Maybe your other athlete swimmer is only competing in the evening. Just give an example. Now you're going to offset, he's going to have an impact on the Olympic gold medalist that's swimming, your swimmer in the morning, which is going to affect his performance in the morning.
Yeah.
There's so many ways, when it comes to pre-competition, what to do when they travel.
Yes.
Because it's definitely going to add that 5%. Okay, so just to get, so if you can, guys, rather keep it to an hour before bedtime. If you are using technology, rather just get to the TV. You can watch the TV, that's fine. Cell phones, the only problem with the cell phone is it's very bad for your eyes if you're not using a blue light filter. And it can also create some cognitive arousal. It's not the blue light that disrupts melatonin. It's the actual cognitive arousal is what are you doing physically on your phone? Are you answering emails? Is it something that you have to provide like input to? So if there is stuff that you need to do, rather do it on your PC, change the blue light filter, rather move that early in the day and just watch the TV to wind down. Okay. So I think we can move on to the next slide.
Brilliant.
And guys, that is the wrap from me. I hope I didn't put you guys to sleep. That is my contact details. So it's barry@successfulsleeper.com. My website is www.successfulsleeper.com. And my Instagram feed as well is Successful Sleeper. So if you guys want to follow me on Instagram and social media, I try to post on a regular basis some content. And that is my mobile number. Feel free to email me, or you can drop me a WhatsApp text and I'll be happy to answer further questions. Okay.
Barry, thank you very, very, very much.
Yeah.
One question I do want to ask the group is, how many of you believe that this content is going to be useful for your parents? How many of you think that, sort of a brief 30-minute presentation would be well attended by the parents in your squad? If you can just let me know.
Yes, Barry, from Swim Coach side, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
It has been an eye-opener for me personally, and I do hope, you know, what we try to bring coaches is something that is new and starts them thinking in the right direction. So as Tracy has mentioned, it's something we would love to take to the broader spectrum in the teacher, the parents and the athletes themselves. So
now
thank you for your
obviously,
time. We do appreciate it.
yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. So obviously when you guys you see me one-on-one, we take this another step. And this is when on a one-on-one basis, the athletes will go through all individual screening. They go through, I've got jet lag that I work at as well. There's an app that I use that helps calculate the jet lag to prevent fatigue. So that's when we take it up to 5th and 6th gear if athletes see me on a one-on-one basis. But this is quite useful to understand, and obviously keep it as simple as possible, because I think we all relate to this information that are brought upon everybody this evening. We all have circadian rhythms, we all have relationships with circadian rhythm, and we all have chronotypes. We're all exposed to technology and sunlight. So I hope everyone's going to start their optimal recovery flow, whether it's the morning or midday schedule.
Okay, great, Barry. Thanks so much. So guys, we will be distributing some stuff from Barry, his contact details, details to his website, details to his programs. I think that if from a psychology perspective, I know that one of the first questions a psychologist or a sports psychologist would ask an athlete is, are they sleeping well? And what does their diet look like? So this is a good place to start if you are perhaps having an issue with a particular athlete. So we will distribute Barry's details in follow-up emails tomorrow. As always, with the process of Swim Coach and all of these workshops, there will be a mandatory follow-up questionnaire that attendees will need to complete in order to get their CPD points. That will be up first thing tomorrow morning. So if you can touch base with us then, just touch in on the Swim Coach website and get that done for us. Barry, anything else from you?
No, I just hope everyone enjoyed it. It looks like everyone did enjoy it. And I hope the content wasn't too scientific. And yeah, I had fun.
Great. Barry, thanks very much.
Okay. Thanks, Tracy.
Great.
Thanks, coaches.
Tracy,
it was
thanks,
great.
Cheryl. Thanks, coaches.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Barry.